session on managing resistance to change with our keynote speaker, Brother Charles Hogg. We are really honored to have such a distinguished audience with us today, and we sincerely appreciate your time and your presence. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible effort of our organizers, Raj Yoga Events. Raj Yoga Events is a dedicated initiative that partners with Raj Yoga Center to organize and promote transformative programs that inspires inner peace, self-development, and overall well-being. Their mission is to empower individuals and communities by offering valuable insights into spiritual wisdom and practical meditation techniques. This event has been made possible by their dedication and vision. And to achieve such a great vision, you need a powerful, thoughtful, understanding, caring and loving mentor and leader. We are fortunate to have such a great persona, the director of Raj Yoga Events, Sister Bharati. Sister Bharati, with more than 30 years of experience in spirituality and meditation, she has been a guiding force in helping individuals discover inner peace and resilience. She has traveled to various countries to empower people to embrace change and cultivate peace and happiness in their daily lives through talks, seminars, and retreats. We deeply appreciate her contribution to this event and her lifelong commitment to spiritual education. We all know change is an inevitable part of life, right? And learning to manage it with the right mindset and tools is a little crucial nowadays, right? Everyone agrees? So today, we are really privileged to have an expert with us who will guide us through this journey. Our esteemed speaker this evening, Brother Charles Hogg, who is a National Coordinator of Meditation Center in Australia, National Director of many international projects such as Million Minutes of Peace Appeal, Global Cooperation for a Better World, Coordinator of Peace of Mind, a very popular annual international meditation retreat in India. As a senior Raj Yoga teacher, Brother Charles has dedicated over 40 years to helping individuals and organizations embrace transformation through emotional intelligence and spiritual wisdom. He has traveled to more than 80 countries as United States of America, Singapore, Canada, Malaysia, Korea, Colombia, and many, many more. A long list is there. Delivering sessions at international conferences, corporate leadership summits, and spiritual retreats. Brother Charles was motivated to begin meditation by his deep concern for humanity's collective impact on each other and environment. He believes that meditation is a powerful tool for maintaining mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being in a world increasingly challenged by stress and anxiety. Today, he oversees, I think, more than 40 centers over Australia and plays a key role in major international projects for the meditation center there. So without further ado, Let us start the event. And it is really my honor to invite our keynote speaker, Brother Charles, to the stage. Welcome, brother. To extend our heartfelt gratitude, now I would like to invite the director of Raj Yoga events, Sister Bharati, to welcome brother by presenting the bouquet. So now, without making it more delay, we'll just hand over the stage to Brother Charles with a round of applause.
Good evening, dear friends. It's very lovely to be here, and I think I might stand because I can see all of you and you can see me. It's very lovely to be back in Abu Dhabi after I'm not sure how many years, but maybe 5 years or so, and I think it's my 4th visit here over a long period of time. And I'd very much like to thank Sister Bharati for having me, and Raj Yoga events as well. I thought tonight, and it's a very homely atmosphere here, so I might just share a few of my thoughts, and there'll be plenty of time for a little bit of discussion, because I think all of us have experience in these areas, and it's nice to have a bit of interaction. And as you know, we will always have some meditation as well. We live in an extraordinary world. There's 8 billion human beings, 195 countries at the last count, keep going up and down, 6,500 spoken languages in our world, and 4,500 practiced religions. What an incredible world. And I wonder how you feel seeing this world, seeing all the diversity in this world, all the differences in the world, seeing the accelerated change in our world. How are you managing? How are you managing this incredibly sensitive mental, emotional, and spiritual landscape which we all have to deal with? And I was reading some time ago about Charles Darwin, I think you know, who wrote a book about 170 years ago which really had a massive effect on the whole world at the time, Origin of Species. And Charles Darwin really spent his life studying change, you can say. And the essence of his book, if you could synthesize it into a few words, was just adapt or die. And his research, his lifetime research all over the world, in fact, he spent a lot of time close to where I live in Australia too, was that at times of huge change, like now, at times of crisis, like now, it's not the strongest who survive. It's not the most intelligent who survive. It's those who adapt to change. And I think it's an amazing sort of message for all of us that we're in a time where probably one of the most necessary life skills for all of us is to sort of go with the flow, move with change. Because every part of life, it's not just the working life, it's family life, it's gender roles, every part of life is changing so dramatically at the moment. And if we can't really go with the movement, then we find it creates an incredible amount of stress and anxiety and unhappiness fundamentally. And at the end of the Cold War, the American Army did a bit of a survey of what sort of world they were trying to work in. And they did a lot of research, and they came up with a little acronym, and it was VUCA, V-U-C-A. V for volatile, U for uncertain, C for complex, and A for ambiguous. Does that sound like our world to you?
Yeah.
A really complicated world. And when you really look at this volatile, things can explode in a second. Even in the last few weeks, look at our world. Just things can, there's such a volatile world, uncertain. Fundamentally, anything can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere in this world at the moment. And because this world is so unpredictable, anxiety is exponential. I have a few friends in Australia who are psychologists and psychotherapists, and they say worldwide anxiety is just going through the roof because there's so much uncertainty about our future, individually, family-wise, and collectively. Complex. You know, the world is like a huge system. There's many little components in this system. So a war in Europe, in Ukraine, affected all the supply chains of the entire world. Just recently, there's a new leadership in America. It's changing. All of us is being affected by this. So it's a very complex world and then ambiguous because there's no clarity. You know, sometimes working in business, working in government, working anywhere, to get real clarity is very difficult. And so then how do we make decisions to move into the future in the best way? And this is like the environment all of us are living. And so it impacts all of us. And in fact, it impacts all generations as well. And all human beings are really trying to manage this world environment which we're all faced with. Is it easy? Is it easy? It's not easy. And I think it's good to acknowledge that it's an extremely challenging world in which we're living in. Have you ever seen a tree on a very windy day? Does a tree just stand erect and rigid and just face the wind? It doesn't, does it? A tree bends and molds and sort of with the will of the wind. And I think it's sort of a great metaphor for life today that we have to actually go with the winds of life. The winds of life are blowing very strong. And the more we resist, it's not good for us health-wise, mentally, emotionally, or physically. And this is where we're all having to adjust to these constantly changing environments. Even when I'm in Sydney, I often live in a beautiful retreat centre in the Blue Mountains just behind Sydney. It's a World Heritage area. And we have a beautiful sort of little river there with a waterfall. And sometimes when I go and watch it, you know, the water goes over all the stone. And you notice how water just finds its own way. And water finds the path of least resistance. And it's almost like that's what we have to do at the moment. You know, find a way in life so that there's least resistance, because as I was saying, so much data shows that the more I mentally resist, the more I create stress for myself, anxiety. It has a massive effect on my mental health and my physical health as well. So it's almost like we're at a time where we've got a choice. We can adapt or resist. And you know, adaptation, what does that really mean? In my past, I used to think to adapt means I had to force myself to accept things. I had to force myself to tolerate things. But now I really see that adapting is letting go all forms of inner resistance. And if I can say a mindset of againstness, you know how sometimes the mind is sort of against things. And what happens in life, I think, is that we're all faced with challenging situations. And we build this wall of resistance in our mind, someone's behavior, a change in the workplace, a change in family dynamics. And what actually happens is I build this wall of my thoughts and feelings of disapproval, of dislike, of rejection, of feeling threatened and feeling insecure. And the more I feed that sort of mindset of againstness, you know, what happens to me? Well, how do I feel? It just creates so much tension inside of me. And actually, I was reflecting on this some years ago, sometimes, because we all have that resistance. Why do I resist? Why do I resist? And I came to the conclusion that sometimes we have like an attachment of how things were. Things were okay, and the change, I don't like it, so I resist that. Or I have a resistance, an attachment to how things should be. I want things to be different. I can't accept reality that things are changing, things are different. The world's changing, the economy's changing, the government's changing, the workplace is changing, everything is changing, but I'm not going to go with the flow. I resist it. And it's like an attachment inside of me to how things were or how things should be. And I think that, this is something which all of us have to work with at the moment. And I think what we work with here is sort of inner change, if I can say that. Because a little while ago, I was working with somebody I found a bit challenging. Anyone here have worked with somebody you find challenging? I think it's very normal. And one day I was with this person and I was feeling that resistance. You create these thoughts of sort of dislike or criticism. And I asked myself, why am I resisting this person? And I could see so clearly I was holding on to a position of how this person should behave, how this person should be. And I can honestly say that the realization was so strong, I just dropped it almost instantly. And I was amazed how light I felt. Almost instantly, I freed myself. And I begin to realize that the resistance is this self-created feeling because in a way we lose awareness of my mind, how my mind works, taking responsibility for my thoughts and all these sorts of feelings. It had a massive change for me. And now when I find if even slightly that resistance, that starting when I build this wall in my mind about a situation, a person, a change in an organization, I consciously deprogram myself from building that wall and holding on to a position because I can't accept reality. The change is there, but I can't accept the change. And living and seeing this world, I think there's 3 conclusions I come to. And the first is that there's no turning back. Many people want to wind back the clock to the good old days. Do you think the good old days are going to come again? I don't think so. I think change is going to get faster and faster. There'll be social transformation, economic upheaval, new technologies. Actually, it's going to get more and more. And it's a sign to all of us, unless I do something to manage it internally, it's just going to influence me more and more. The resistance will just grow. The second conclusion I come to is we need a new approach. If I don't have a new approach to life, all this change is going to keep knocking me down and knocking me over. And one of the things which really helped me some years ago was when someone asked me a simple question. And sometimes simple things really have an impact. And she said to me, what do you have control over? And what do I have control over? Do we have control over the economy? Anyone here? Silly question, wasn't it? Do I have control over my boss, my colleagues, my partner, my children? I'm getting all these in my head. Ultimately, my sphere of influence in life, total influence, is my thoughts, my words, my attitude, my behavior, my actions. I can't change the world out there, but I can change my reaction to the world out there. And this is spirituality. Spirituality equips me for managing this massive change in the world. Spirituality helps me observe my own resistance and bring change so that I can emotionally manage my inner world as I'm trying to be responsible in the world out there. The third conclusion is we need a new wisdom. We need a new wisdom for these times. And I often feel the three wisdoms that we often hear about today. The first is my intellectual ability. Look at all of us here, very well educated. And that's good. It helps me get a job, make money, provide for my family. But when life poses those huge challenges where sometimes you lose your confidence, you don't feel so confident about who you are, or worry or fear or anxiety, or sometimes you feel yourself go into a bit of an unhappy place, almost a depressed place. Does that intelligence help? I don't think so. I don't think so. And the incredible thing in this world, we are so educated for the world outside, but we are so uneducated about our internal world. And so when problems come, I have no idea how to respond. I just overthink, overanalyze. I can't sleep. A whole lot of resistance begins to happen inside of me because I'm so educated how to manage out there, but so uneducated how to manage myself internally. And so the second intelligence, as we all know, is emotional intelligence, which personally I feel is probably one of the most important things for a leader. To me, a leader may have incredible skill sets and education, but if I don't really have the skill set of understanding people, knowing how to tune into people, reading people's faces and feelings, then sometimes you're ineffective in managing people. Really, to me, leadership is all about managing others in a way. But the third form of intelligence, and maybe I should say that emotional intelligence is really building rich, loving, sustainable relationships with others. But the intelligence we need today, I would call it spiritual intelligence, the wisdom. If emotional intelligence is the wisdom to build a rich, loving relationship with others, spiritual intelligence is the wisdom to build a rich, loving relationship with me. Quite frankly, this seems to be the hardest thing in life today. My feeling, and this is a very simplistic view of our world, how many problems are there out there? They're just so numerous. It's almost like there's just a shopping list of issues. Where does it begin? My own feeling is when the first relationship in life is so unhealthy, the relationship of me with me, if it's very dysfunctional, if I talk down to myself, I criticize myself, I beat myself up if I make a mistake, I have a whole lot of reactions to myself. If that relationship is unhealthy, it influences each and every part of my life. And it's almost that we're coming to a time where we really need to develop my own spiritual wisdom to manage the inner world, which makes me effective in the external world too. And this is why I would say in the whole journey of managing my resistance to this fast-changing world, I need to learn a lot of things. And I feel the first learning we all need is to understand who I am. Surely that should be the first lesson of life, isn't it? And yet, it's not such an easy lesson. You know, Plato, the Greek philosopher, he said, you can only understand the world out there when you first understand the world in here, because your perception is like a lens on life. Your sense of self is how you interpret people, situations, and everything. And sometimes I feel we try to build a life without knowing the self. To me, it's like trying to build a big building without a foundation. What happens to a big building without a foundation? It collapses. What happens in life if I go about life and I have an external role to play, an image? You know, I'm this, I'm that, I have a whole, professional data and career. But inside, I'm not really so connected with who I am. So occasionally I lose my confidence, occasionally I fall down, occasionally I get so frustrated, I lose my temper with people, a whole lot of things, because I haven't really spent time with myself. And this is why one of the ways I look at it these days, which has helped me, is that in all of us, there's 3 personalities. And I would say 2 of these personalities are extremely resistant to change, avoid change at all costs, but one of them starts to open the door to managing what's happening in the world outside. The first personality takes its whole sense of self from my bodily image. Who am I? I'm a whole set of labels. My gender, my age, my nationality, my religion, my position, my education, my family, hundreds of labels. But what is actually common to all those labels is that they are all temporary. And I call this personality the I of arrogance, or the I of superiority. And when this I rules in my inner system, I compare with others. And I think subtly, it may not even be conscious, I am better, I know more, the way I see life is right, my perception of reality is right. But when it comes into my feelings, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive. And so if I'm feeling a lot of these emotions washing through my mind, why? Because I have a false sense of self. I've sowed a wrong seed in my inner world to really understand who I am. Because I'm more identifying with my temporary self than my permanent self. So when my ego is sovereign in my inner system, I have so much resistance to change. Because when I have ego, I have this perception of who I am. And any change threatens that sense of identity. It threatens who I see myself as. And so I fight it. I fight things which are threatening and making me feel uncomfortable inside. So my sense of identity, that first I, the I of arrogance, the I of superiority, my ego. But actually that ego is a front for the second I. And I think in life, the way life is today, we develop this image for the world out there. But often inside we feel quite different, don't we? Because we feel society expects something from us. We have to live up to people's expectations. And sometimes we feel a lot of pressure trying to live up to what I feel society and others and my job and everything expects of me. A lot of internal pressure can be created. And so this second I is the I of inferiority, the ego of inferiority, the I of lack of self-respect. Personally, I feel this I is ruling our world at the moment. And when this I is alive inside me, it also takes its whole sense of self from my temporary body, my bodily image. And when this I is ruling in my inner system, I compare with others, but it's the opposite. That others are better, others know more, others don't love me, others don't value me, others don't respect me. And sometimes this sort of mantra goes on constantly inside my head, feeling a bit of a victim of life. But when it comes into my feelings, that's when I feel hopeless about myself sometimes, inadequate, unworthy, inferior, or I would say depressed. In psychology, depression is like a sadness that my dream in life to be loved and valued hasn't happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. I'm living my life, I have a family, I have a job, but who am I? Who am I really? And so what happens is that when my inner world is dominated by my ego and my lack of self-respect, my whole thinking and feeling, I'm on that emotional roller coaster. You know, that one day you feel great, everything's great. one word from somebody, one news from something, crash. I go down into this dark place and then I come up again. So it's like, how can I live a life based on this? And this is why in spirituality, the third I is the original I. Who am I? And I am a soul. And the soul is really a wonder, because the soul exists, but the soul is so subtle. The soul is just a point. And in mathematics, a point exists, but it has no length, breadth, width. It has no size. The soul, I the soul, am immortal, eternal, a non-physical energy. I live in the front of the brain, in the center of the forehead. And the incredible thing about the true self, I have no gender. I have no nationality. I have no religion. You think how these things divide our world at the moment. So much division based on these things. And yet the reality is, of all of us here, we are souls. And you know, I've seen data about beliefs in the world. 80% of the world believes there's something more than a physical body. We all have an intuitive sense, but we don't know accurately. And so we take the identity of the temporary self, and in a way, I've sown a falsehood in my life. And the extension of that is all this stress, anxiety, resistance, mood swings, depression, all these sorts of feelings, which are just so incredibly uncomfortable. And my own experience is that as you begin to practice who am I, it's almost like coming home to a sweet place inside where you feel so easy, and you feel you take the pressure off yourself to be something, to look good, to be noticed. You know, sometimes that internal sort of pressure, and I begin to accept myself as I am. And honestly, when we begin to do this, I begin to deprogram a lot of my resistance, the thinking of dislike, disapproval, rejection, questioning why, a whole lot of this stuff which takes so much of the quality of life away. And sometimes I think that the inner world is like a tree. A tree has a seed, a trunk, branches and leaves. The leaves are your thoughts. And when you see a huge, huge tree, how many leaves are there? Tens of thousands of thoughts are there. Tens of thousands of leaves. But what is feeding the leaves are my mental and emotional habits, the branches. And we have a habit now to resist, a habit to feel stressed, a habit to feel anxious, a habit to be addicted to these telephones and things like that, you know. We've got these habits, but what's feeding the branches, the emotional patterns, is the trunk, which is the subconscious. You know, Freud said that 80% of our behavior is influenced from my subconscious. But what is feeding the trunk is the seed. The seed is my sense of identity. And if I sow a false seed in my inner world, that I am a temporary body, I'm a male, I'm an Australian, I'm an architect, I'm all these sort of labels, it affects the trunk, it affects the mental, emotional patterns, and on the top, so much overthinking. You know, the disease of the modern world is overthinking. We just can't stop thinking to the point that we can't even sleep at night. So, once again, I'm not educated how to manage this part of life. And so all of this creates this incredible resistance internally to so many things happening around me. But when I sow the seed of truth, the truth that actually the reality of life is I'm a non-physical spiritual being. The soul is immortal, eternal. That's who I am. And when you experiment with that truth, it influences the chunk, the subconscious, your mental and emotional patterns, the branches, and on the top, less thinking, a lot calmer and a lot cooler. So sometimes what happens is that when I overthink, when I have a lot of negative thoughts, we try to cherry pick out my negative thoughts, oh, that's not good, so I'll try to remove them. Cherry pick out 1 and 10 more grow. But what we're going here is going to the seed of the issue. At the top of the tree, thoughts of stress, anxiety, worry, fear, resistance. But when I go to the bottom of the tree and I sow the truth, it begins to change. And so the first step, I would say, in managing my resistance to change is to really know and experience who I am. And the second step, I feel, is to really begin to understand why I resist change so much. Why is it so uncomfortable? And this is also going deeper into the self. Because the soul, as I've been calling it, the Atma means actually 3 things. I, the living, the dweller in the body, is actually an overname for 3 aspects of consciousness. The mind, and the mind is actually like a screen, like here. And the mind collects data from the sense organs. What you hear, what you see, what you taste, that data is thrown up on the screen of the mind. The intellect is the faculty assessing the data. As I'm speaking at the moment, a part of you is constantly saying, yes, I agree with that. No, I don't agree with that. That part of you assessing what you're hearing, that's your intellect. That's your intellect. The intellect is the decision maker. So it assesses the data and the intellect decides, yes, I'll react and say something, no, I won't do something. So the intellect makes decisions and every action actually is recorded in my subconscious. All of us sitting here carry the whole story of my past in my subconscious. And that's an incredible thing. And what happens when you do an action 10 times, 20 times? In psychology, they say, do an action 20 times and it becomes a habit. We have all these patterns in my character. A pattern to react to a particular person. A pattern to get upset and angry at a particular situation. We have all these patterns, and that's why when sometimes you think someone says something, I shouldn't react, but you do. You know how you think, I don't want to react and get upset, but your emotions are stronger than you, and it's like you become a victim of your own nature, because these habits are scored so deeply inside of me. And this is why I really feel that the third step in managing resistance to change is to learn to meditate properly. And because what is meditation? It's caring for myself. What do we do for our body? We will exercise, we'll eat well, we'll rest. What do you do for your mind? Actually, your whole life meets in your mind. You know, your thoughts, your feelings, your relationships, your work, it's all happening up here, and yet we don't do anything for it. Is it any wonder that sometimes I can feel so heavy internally or so deeply unhappy? And so meditation is like a methodology to learn about myself and help understand my thoughts and feelings. And you know, the mind is an extraordinary thing. You know, some scientists say that in a waking day, the mind creates around 70,000 unique thought patterns. Now, I quote that figure occasionally. I haven't got a clue how they counted them, so please don't ask me. But it's a lot of thinking, right? One scientist says too, in a minute, you can speak 150 words, but you think 500. You know how you're talking to somebody and yet so many other things are going on in your mind about your relationship with that person, what they said to you last time. You know, your mind is amazing. And you know, in psychology, they say that you can be aware of 7 different things at the same moment. Just like me, I'm talking to you. I'm thinking about, what I might say next. I'm watching your response to me. I can see people taking photos at the back, or, your mind is doing many jobs at the same time. We have to look after this instrument. And I feel that if I really want to manage and have a quality of life, as I said, my whole life meets in my mind. I have to do something for my mind. And this is why meditation is so important, because you know what? If you really observe life, most of your thinking is reaction. Someone says something, I react mentally. I hear some news, I react mentally. But when I sit to meditate, what am I doing? I'm creating the thoughts I want. I'm actually consciously creating thoughts and consciously creating feelings from those thoughts. In other words, I'm taking back the authority of my thinking. Rather than you say something, I react. I hear some news, I react. I see something, I react. I'm just reacting to life. When I start to learn to meditate gently, I'm taking back the authority of my inner world. I begin to practice meditation, create the thoughts I want, and that starts to flow into my daily life. So when a situation happens, I'm aware, well, I can react, and sometimes my old habits make me, but actually I can have a new response to negative situations and difficult situations. And when I meditate, what I love to do is wake up early in the morning and just sit very, very quietly. And I just begin to think, who am I? And I just visualize the self, the incredible wisdom that I'm this point of consciousness that always exists. I can never, ever die. And I start to go into this, and I start to begin to see that I let go identifying with what I do, my job, my work. That's not who I am, that's what I do. Even as a mother or a father, that's not who I am, that's what I do. Just step back, and you'll feel yourself calming a little bit. And then observe, sometimes even stand back and observe all the labels of this body. Actually, they're all labels, they're all temporary. That's not who I am. That's what my body represents. And then even step back further and you feel yourself cooling down because you're going closer to the truth of who you are. Even identifying with my story, what has happened in my life, what people have said to me, what people have done to me, how things have worked out, how people have treated me in the wrong way. Even step back from that and you come to this incredibly sweet place internally where I feel so peaceful. And as I often say, that the aim of meditation is not to be peaceful. That's the result. The aim of meditation is to know who I am and experience who I am. The automatic byproduct is the speed of the mind, the whole inner world cools down. And you have the gift of peace. Is there anything more precious than using your thoughts and feelings to create peace in your mind? And when you do that, it is such a gift that your presence, your vibrations, your face will radiate that to people around you. So it's not just that you benefit, but your state of mind will influence those around you. What happens is the more I get to know the self, you develop an inner strength, you develop more resilience, you're not so affected by the scenes of life. And I begin to learn how to accept. Sometimes we just have to accept what is. Accept what happens to us how can we do that? What I find is we move from a resistor to an observer. A resistor is resisting everything in life. Observer now, I sit here and I watch things. Yes, I have an aim, I make effort, but I I let go my expectations of an outcome. Sometimes we have so much attachment, it has to turn out like this. It has to be like this. I want my desire fulfilled, and when it's not, a huge disappointment. But the detached observer just learns to make effort, but whatever happens is whatever happens. So that I'm not pinning my mental peace and happiness to the outcome of a business deal or a relationship or whatever it may be. Because then I will just dance to the tune of outcomes. So I begin to accept what is. I begin to accept others. And sometimes I think that, relationships are like icebergs. Not that they're cold, but the iceberg, 10% above the water, 90% the below. So when you meet somebody, you see the 10%, right? And you say, oh, that's nice. I like that, and I connect with. But what happens as you get to know people? The 90% under the water starts to emerge. And then you start to, oh, I'm not sure about this, as we get to know the personality. And actually, the more I begin to know myself, I begin to understand that everyone else is also a soul like me. Everyone, quite frankly, I'm not a psychologist or a counselor, but I've listened to thousands of people around the world. Quite frankly, scratch the surface of the majority. Life is not easy for virtually anyone today. It's a battle. There's a battle within. And so you tend to have more compassion for the other. Otherwise, we can jump to so much judgment about other people. They should be like this. How can they behave like this? And really, to have compassion for the other is just such an important thing, especially as a leader. Because I find these days, if a leader is kind to people, kindness is such a blessing and a gift, genuinely kind, to understand that underneath they're also going through a lot of stuff. And if I'm understanding, compassion and kind, they will become the most loyal people in your company and help you because they feel that love from you. They feel that respect from you. And one of the things I've learned here is the power of good wishes and pure feelings, to use your mind to have good feelings for other people, because your mind is like a perfume. Your mind spreads its vibration in the atmosphere, which influences people. And really, when you see people really who they are as the soul, and you have love and good wishes for them, you can't imagine that is an incredible gift for another. I think to have respect for people is one of the most powerful things of a leader. I feel the main thing for a leader is to hold the value of everyone they're leading in their attitude. People feel your goodwill, they feel your love, and they will be really loyal. I've seen some leaders like this who are incredibly loving towards all those around, and they build this incredibly strong, loyal atmosphere, unified atmosphere. The third thing is really, and with the self too, with others, it's like becoming a benevolent observer. But with myself, after accepting myself, I have to become an honest observer of myself. And that's a wonderful thing, that I can stand a bit detached from myself, observe myself. What do I need to learn? If I'm feeling anxious, it's a little message to myself. I have to look deeper. Why? Rather than projecting, it's not about out there. It's about in here. It's my reactions that make me anxious. It's not the situation. Yes, the situations are difficult, but I can choose how I react. It's my reactions, and I can bring change in my reactions. I've really seen people with huge responsibilities and huge organizations remain incredibly calm because they're looking after their inner world, they're caring for their inner world, they're looking after the quality of thoughts, they're meditating, and also having that good feeling for other people. in saying all of that, it's a very challenging world we're living in. But the message really is look after your inner world. Do something for yourself and do it regularly. Because I feel, quite frankly, the world out there is even getting faster and more challenging than it is now. Real investment in quality of life is an investment in me and my mental, emotional and spiritual well-being. It's such an important thing to do at this time. So I'm going to put a little bit of a pause button on myself. And if anyone, we will have some meditation, but if anyone would like to, ask something, make a comment. As I said at the beginning, we're just having a family chit-chat. Would you call it like a family chit-chat? It's important to talk about these things, actually, because sometimes it's just like we're out in the world, we're sort of an image working and we just have a whole persona, but what's happening internally? How am I really feeling internally?
So I'm really, really speechless. I'm still trying to process it in my mind. I think everybody was agreeing with me, right? Yes. Very, very less sound I'm hearing. Really? Really? Again?
Yes.
Sure?
Yes.
One more time?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Because I'm meeting myself first time, right? How many people are meeting yourself first time today? Like Brother has said, we all are living in this world which is really, really, we have no words for that. And meeting myself first time, and then introducing, and then processing about it, it is really, really challenging. But Brother Charles, I'm really thankful. You have made it really easy. Agree? Because it was really easy to understand, and then easy to accept that whatever we were thinking that who we are was all the temporary labels. I'm this, I look like this, I treat like this to others and to myself. So, I don't want to talk further. I just want to open the floor for the question and answer or any chit chat. As Brother said, it's a family and a small gathering we have got, but very, very beautiful people around me. So, you have any questions, just raise your hand and we can just ask Brother and then he can explain us. Yes, please.
My question is, thanks a lot first. Whatever we heard is really amazing and provoke us to think twice, to search who we are. And my question is that, today the world is very volatile. The business is also posing a lot of challenges every day. So, like as a working professional, we make a plan A, plan B, sometimes the plan C. But in the practical life, if something else happens, it really takes a setback. So we take certain time to come back out of it. The challenges which we never imagined, even making plan A, B, C or something like that. So how to cope up with that?
I think that plan A is to know who I am. And plan B is to experience, because honestly, my own experience, like putting an anchor down in your life, putting a real anchor down. I know who I am. And yes, that's what's the most important thing. Secondly, I'm a family man. I have family to look after. But thirdly, I have a career out there. But because I've invested my whole identity in my career, if it goes well, sometimes I get really proud. Sometimes it deceives me with my own ego. And if it goes badly, it's not just that the business goes badly, it affects my whole sense of self because I've indented. But actually, it's not who I am, it's just what I do. And I think we have to prepare myself because the world is incredibly volatile, like you say. And this is where I think the more you put that anchor down in your spiritual life, it enables you to cope with what is going to be an incredibly volatile year. You know, we can all feel it's already like that. And therefore, it will affect you, but not as much as it would. And therefore, you know, when you're really affected by things in the economy and whatever, we don't make good decisions. Our emotions take over, our worries and our fears, and we make very bad decisions. And this is where, when you become aware of yourself, automatically you become the observer of things rather than the absorber. You know, the reality of life today is that we're a bit empty. Spiritually, we're empty. And so we need to fill up the emptiness. So I sometimes think the mind is like a vacuum cleaner. If you give me love, if you give me respect, if you give me cooperation, if you insult me, if you complain about, I take everything, you know, and then I blame others. You know, it's like I'm so vulnerable to whatever is happening out there. I'm like a puppet dancing to the tune in the world. Because I was sharing yesterday, actually, I have a friend in Australia who's a palliative care physician. He deals with people when they're dying. And he's thousands and thousands of people. He's an incredible person. He's a meditator. And he says to me, he's told me so many times, when people are dying, there's two things on their mind. First, what sort of person was I? It's like a self-evaluation. Was I a good human being? And secondly, how did I treat people? And you know, he often says, I've never heard one person, even people who have built huge empires, say, I wish I'd worked harder, I wish I'd made more money. Because these things become secondary to what's really important in life. What is really important is to be a good human being with good values, really good values, and to treat people with a lot of love and respect. And when you are dying, you'll think, well, yes, I lived according to my truth. I was a good human being. But sometimes all the things in life we strive for, and I often feel, you know, that when we get hyper busy, yes, sometimes we do have a lot to do, but actually it's more because if we're silent, if we just become still. Someone even told me recently, you know, that when they don't have much to do, the mind takes over, you know, and the mind starts to turn on itself, negative thinking, worry. And so busyness is a form of avoidance or escape sometimes from really seeing what's happening inside. We get so busy, so active, because nothing wrong with busyness, nothing wrong with business or anything like that. It's all good. But if I neglect my inner world, at some point it's going to turn against me. And what we're saying really, spirituality is about having balance. Give time to the self, time to the family, time to work. Whereas sometimes we just give all my time to what I do rather than who I am. You know, I know it's easy to talk about these things, but it's important because, you know, even for your family, I've seen some people, when they begin to meditate, we just become a much nicer human being. And people like me a lot more, you know, which is a really lovely thing. But I really feel investment is in the self is blue chip investment, if I can say. It's the really important, because this is what will carry forward, you know, even after death as well. So, yes, please. Do you mind if you use the microphone, because everyone will hear?
Basically, I want to know of the meditation technique per se. Because what I feel is, like when you're sitting on meditation, you think more than what you do normal the day. I mean, you're sitting, one thought, stop, no, another. I mean, a chain of events starts, like for half an hour, one. And then you ultimately realize what you were doing, which is thinking. I mean, is there a way to stop that, or is it normal? What is it? What is exactly the technique which actually makes you realize what you are? You are trying to know what you are, but somehow you cannot reach that stage. Maybe I don't know how many years it takes.
You know, I think that you know, meditation is an art form. It takes time to educate myself. Like if you want to be a good tennis player, You have to practice a lot, don't you? You want to play the piano, you have to practice. And it's the same with meditation, but I would say that we just think often, and because they're good thoughts, we relax a little bit. But what we learn here is literally to completely detach from my temporary body. I would say even to the point you always understand what death is and how the soul leaves the body. And the more you detach, the fragrance of feelings come in your mind, the feelings of peace. And they're the things that really sustain you, the feelings of contentment, the feelings of love, the feelings of the wisdom of knowing who I am. But it takes practice. And that's what I do in the morning. I wake up and I withdraw completely. I just feel I'm just sort of sitting lightly in the forehead. And the sense of the whole inner world cooling down. And you have such clarity to see what I need to do, what I need to change, how I need to respond to the problems of life. You know, it's a self-education. It takes time. And we begin to feed the mind with thoughts of self-awareness. At the beginning, it's just thinking. But after a while, meditation is converting what I know into what I feel. When you extract the truth out of the self, you become peaceful. But I often say the first step is to know. The second step is to believe. The next 998 steps are educating myself how to experience. That takes patience. But really, to learn the art to sit down and withdraw completely back to the true self and go into a state of peace whenever you want to do, is there anything more important in life than that? It's such a way of recharging yourself as a person. You know, what is a human life without true peace? You know, when the mind's just driving me, driving, my thoughts are just, we can't stop thinking today. It's not a pleasant life. You know, I taught a billionaire in Australia how to meditate. And he's an amazing man. And he said, you know, he said to me, I've been a total success out there and a complete failure in here, he said. I said, why? He said, I'm not happy. I built this empire. I'm not a happy person. I'm not enjoying life. You know, and that's why he decided I need to learn to meditate. I have to get in touch with myself. Now, he's still doing his business, but he's got a different perspective on what's really important. That rather than my whole sense of self being in that role, which is temporary, I invest in me, which is permanent. And, you know, as I say, this is a balance. We try to keep a balance here. We need to do the work, but look after myself, care for myself, understand which thoughts can make me peaceful, which thoughts make me peaceless, and start to move in that direction.
Because we know that it's a big investment.
Brother, I know who I am.
Congratulations.
But 23 hours in a day, I feel like I don't know who I am. What is the solution for it?
That's a great question, really, because, you know, I would say meditation is an attitude to life. Meaning, it's like a decision that I'm going to live as a peaceful soul. That's who I am. And even before a meeting, you know, I know some people who are meditators before meetings, before clients, they just take those few minutes. Because actually, what I often see is there's 3 approaches to meditation. As a hobby, and you just come to a talk like this and it's really nice, you know, we enjoy it. We go out there and just become the same person. We can do it as a discipline. I find a lot of people meditate today and they sit, they meditate, they calm down. As soon as they stop meditating, they just revert to their old thinking. So there is some benefit, but not a lot. But when it's a lifestyle, it's like a decision. I'm going to live in the awareness of who I am. I'm going to fulfill my responsibility to my family and my work, but I'm going to do it in the awareness of who I am. So it's like an attitude to life that I'm going to live as a peaceful soul. And it's an incredible decision. And of course, you won't be that sometimes. The mind will go into upheaval. But the more you practice, the more you move into that space. And I feel for me, when I began to meditate, yes, I would calm down a lot when I meditated, then revert. But after a while, I feel I'm much more the same as I go about each hour of the day. So it makes life a lot easier. But I think it's great that you know who you are, even for 1 hour a day. Next time we meet, maybe it'll be 22 hours of the day. Or maybe 1 hour of the day you're...
First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful session. My question is, when we try to meditate, we try to withdraw ourselves from change. It's like it's happening, let it happen. I don't want to participate in it, but somehow as we are walking in the world, there are certain changes which are very uncertain. Some changes we can predict. Most of the changes nowadays we can't even predict. So it's difficult to get into that kind of a fight to understand where is the balance, how to maintain, whether to withdraw, whether to participate in the fight of coping up with the uncertain changes. So thoughts goes away, energy goes away, everything goes away. And in the end, if we settle down, it's like, who am I, what I'm doing, why I'm doing. And there is huge sense of withdrawal. Why is that so? What is the direction to maintain a balance in such an uncertain, changing world?
You know, actually, we're not talking about withdrawing from change. Actually, we're talking about embracing change with a new mindset. Because the change is inevitable, it's all around us. But rather than that change battering me and affecting me and influencing me and upsetting me, I'm using my internal resources to have a different attitude towards it. So rather than allowing life to dictate to me how I think and feel, I'm now in charge because I know who I am and I'm going to decide. So I'm going to think the way I want to think rather than be a victim of what's happening outside of me. And that's why I was saying that, you know, when you meditate, what are you doing? You're sitting down and you're creating the thoughts you want. So it's almost like you're re-establishing the authority of self-rule in your inner kingdom. Rather than being a victim, this happens, think, 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 that happens, think, think, think. That's how we live today. But I'm practicing meditating, and so the change is still there. We have to be, you know, we have to go with the change. We have to be a part of it as well. But internally, I don't take sorrow from it. I don't feel hurt by it. So that really meditation is to live in the world and have more self-mastery as to how I respond to the world. I'm not running away from life, withdrawing from life, trying to escape from life. No, I'm embracing it, but with a different mindset or a different attitude. You know, if I can say, I don't know whether many of you have done a meditation course, but I would really suggest, and I'm sure somebody will mention this, that try it. Got nothing to lose if you haven't. And what I say, in Australia, we have 4 live-in retreat centres. And when people come, we always say to them, practice every day for a few months and just observe how you feel. And really, almost everybody, once they start. You know, in Australia these days, so many of the big companies have meditation rooms. At universities, they teach all the students how to meditate. The entire 80, 90, 100,000 students, they offer them meditation. It's just absolutely commonplace because we have to look after our mental and emotional health. And to me, it's a great thing. It's a great thing that meditation is becoming more a mainstream situation. Okay, so
as we are having a live streaming also, so mostly all the answers are given. There's one question from a university student coming up, that as they are studying and it's a lot of time taking and they don't have even time, even they learn the meditation, they don't have time to even practice for that. And a lot of anxiety and stress, depression even. They are taking so much of, some kids nowadays are taking medications also to combat that, but and still struggling a lot because they have to study, they have to manage everything. So in this kind of situation, how we should manage, and what is the simplest and the least time-taking technique you can tell, or any suggestion you can advise you can do to them?
Well, thank you. You know, I think it's all about priorities. And because the culture of the world is what's important is out there, the kids feel that's really what's important, how I do. But we need a balance of priorities, and the ultimate priority first is I have to look after myself and help understand who I am. Because otherwise, you know, all things. So it's really setting priorities. And I think, you know, young people today, there's everyone really, there's just so much anxiety and depression. You know, the World Health Organization says 1 in 4 people is clinically depressed. Isn't that amazing? Every 4, actually, I think it's much more than that, really. I think it's even higher than that. And to me, it says there's fundamentally something wrong with the way we live. If everyone is feeling so low, what sort of culture have we created that most human beings internally are struggling with feeling a sense of well-being and optimism in life in that way? And I think if you can say to them, it's really more important. You know, in Australia, I was seeing some data that 20 years ago, parents always wanted their children to be doctors, lawyers, whatever, you know, all that sort of thing. Now all the data says they just want them to be a happy human being. That's what's important, you know, because we're investing my identity in what I do rather than who I am. And I think if we give these messages that really success in life, when you meet somebody who's really loving, kind, humble, they influence you, don't they? Because the beauty of their personality, this is really what's important. And yet I think all these, it's not that work isn't important, but it's taken over almost everything. We're seeking my identity through what I do rather than who I am. And if we just talk to them like that and encourage them, it's essential to learn to meditate for your own. It's like an act of love for yourself. Okay.
Thank you so much. Really wonderful. So I'm sure after we are just near the end of the session, everyone agrees that meditation is essential for each and everyone in this world, right? Agree? So what we are going to do next? Definitely. But today we have Brother Charles, who is going to take us for a few moments to experience that inner peace and serenity. So, brother, can we have a few meditation?
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. And if I can suggest just for a few minutes to put down devices, put down things in your hands, and let's just follow the thoughts suggested. If you feel comfortable, you can keep your eyes open and gently rest your vision on the point of light in front of you. Just sit and consciously relax yourself. Even just feel yourself physically relaxing. And using the quality of my thoughts, the most precious energy of life. I'm going to create an awareness of who I am. Let me begin this journey And first of all, let go all the layers of identity that I've built up. Identifying with what I do, my career, my work. This is important, but it's what I do, it is not who I am. So feel yourself stepping back, withdrawing, letting go, identifying with what I do. And just for a moment, see your body sitting in the chair. Imagine you're above your body looking back at it. And look at all the labels it represents. This is not who I am. This is my bodily image. And once again, as I step back even from my bodily image, my thinking becomes calmer and cooler. And now, observe my life, the story of my life, my past. Even this is not who I am. And as I even step back from that, it's like I'm freeing myself. And I come home to this sweet place in the center of the forehead. And visualize yourself as a tiny spark of life energy. This is the eternal self, the true self, the consciousness. And in this sweet place of self-awareness, I feel I am a peaceful soul. This is my permanent identity. This is who I really am. The deeper I go into this self-awareness, the deeper the peace. The deeper the peace, I feel less influenced by life, situations, personalities, opinions, the state of the world and the economy. I'm present, I'm responsible, but I'm less influenced. Gently, with wisdom and love, I take back the authority of my life. I create the thoughts I want, and I let go of the thoughts I don't want. I take back my inner power. The more I reconnect with my true self, it's like coming home. Then everything comes into perspective. I observe a world changing so fast. but I'm also transforming myself to manage this change. And I see around me many of my colleagues and family and friends suffering with all the change. And I choose to have mercy and compassion. The more I become self-aware and soul-conscious, the quality of my thoughts improve. And the perfume of my mind sustains me, sustains the atmosphere around me, and it sustains the people I love. To give time to yourself, to meditate regularly, is an act of love for myself. If each day I wake, and before my mind engages with what I have to do, what happened yesterday, let me sit quietly and reconnect with my true self.
Thank you so much for the chance. I don't want to comment the sound. Everyone might have felt like that, right? So as we come to the end of the session, how many wants to learn the meditation technique? How many? Not everyone? So whoever wants to learn more about it, we can have the number of Sister Bharati. So you can message on that number and then you can get the more details about it. Okay? And I really want to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude to Brother Charles. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, and from everyone, I think it was really an eye-opening for everyone, and especially myself. And the investment point which actually stuck in my head, right? Even I'm not in the investment field, but that word stuck me that, yeah, it is a really great investment. If I really invest in myself, then outside world will be taken care. Agree? So I think that investment word is easily to understand and remember too. So thank you, Brother Charles, for sharing your invaluable insights, and really we inspired by your wisdom and your experience. You shared a lot of your own personal experiences that really helps, and that actually it's easy to remember. So thank you once again, and a special thanks to the organizers, Raj Yoga events, and our supporters, Define Management and Consultancy Training, and the entire team who made this possible for us today. And special thanks to Raj Yoga Center to have always have the support. And a big thanks to all of beautiful and distinguished audience. You have taken time, your valuable time, and especially on the Sundays. Sunday evenings are mostly, everyone is outside the world. But today we have the journey towards inside. And that is the most, I think this is the most valuable Sunday you all have spent. So really nice to have you all, really nice, very beautiful audience we have got. And as a token of love from our side, we have arranged some sweets and some blessing cards for you on your way out, right? And also one more simple request, if you will find QR codes there placed, you just scan it and then share your valuable feedback. So that will be really helpful, right? And if you are posting anything about today's event, because it's a social media word going on, so feel free to use the hashtag Raj Yoga Events And we encourage you to please visit our website www.rajyogaevents.org and stay connected with us. Follow us for more updates, future events, and more inspiring contents, right? So thanks once again, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening and a great week ahead. Thank you. Bye-bye.